and Truths presents The Lie That Went Viral, a Twists and Truths original about the cost of false accusations. It took 43 seconds for the lie to go public. Jordan's phone buzzed once, then twice, then non-stop. He was standing in the kitchen, rinsing out his coffee mug when the first message came in. Are you okay? Bro, have you seen Twitter? Call me, now, he frowned, drying his hands on a towel. It wasn't even 8 a.m. yet. He tapped open his notifications, and there it was, his name, trending. Not because of his work, not because of the kids he mentored or the award he'd just quietly received from the city, but because of a single post. A post with his photo attached, taken from his organization's website. People need to know who this man really is. He's not a hero. He's a predator. Jordan's heart crashed into his ribs. Predator. The word blurred on the screen. For a second, he thought it was a mistake. A troll. Some kind of sick joke. Then he started reading the replies. OMG, I always knew something was off about him. Look at his picture, you can just tell. Men like this hide in plain sight. Cancel him. Now. In less than a minute, hundreds of people who had never met him decided who he was. Not the boy who had grown up in a cramped apartment and promised himself he'd help kids escape the same traps he almost fell into. Not the youth mentor who stayed late to help with homework and listened to stories nobody else wanted to hear. Not the man who prayed every morning, God, help me do right by these kids today. Number. Now he was a headline, a hashtag, a villain in a story he hadn't even been told yet. The original post came from an account with no real name, just a handle and a blurred profile photo. He made me feel unsafe when I was a teenager at the center, it read. I never said anything because everyone loved him, but I can't stay silent anymore. There were no dates, no details, no name attached, just enough implication to ignite the crowd. Jordan's hands trembled. He forced himself to breathe. Lord, he whispered, you know the truth. Please help the truth stand. But outside his kitchen, the internet had already decided. Within 2 hours, the director of the youth center called. Her voice was tight, brittle. Jordan, we have to suspend you while we look into this. You understand, don't you? He closed his eyes. Do you believe it? He asked quietly. There was a long pause. I don't want to, she said, but we can't ignore it. There's too much attention. The board is getting calls. We have to appear responsible. Appear. The word stung. Come in, she added. We'll talk. But for now, stay off social media. It's ugly out there. He hung up, staring at the floor. An hour ago, he had been a valued employee. Now he was a liability. The fallout came fast. By noon, someone had dug up old photos of Jordan hugging kids at camp, laughing with them in the gym, high-fiving them on game night. Photos meant to show trust, now twisted into something sinister. This picture is so creepy in context. Look at how close he always stands. We need to ask how many kids stayed quiet. The comments were full of anger, fear, and something else. Righteousness. People felt good about taking him down. Jordan's sister, Alicia, showed up unannounced at his apartment that evening, holding takeout and worry in equal measure. They're tearing you apart, she said, eyes shining with tears. It doesn't matter that there's no proof. It doesn't matter that nobody even knows who posted it. They're just believing it. He sank onto the couch, exhausted. You know I didn't do this, he said. It wasn't a question. She sat beside him, gripping his hand. I know, she said firmly. I know who you are. But right now, it's not about truth. It's about noise. The youth center opened an internal investigation. HR asked pointed questions. Lawyers sat in the corner, silent, watchful. Have you ever hugged a student? Yes. When they cried? When they graduated? When they were celebrating? Have you ever been alone with a student in a room with the door closed? No, never. I know the policy. Is there anyone who has accused you of inappropriate behavior in the past? No, he said. then remembered. A parent years ago who misunderstood a joke he'd made about teenagers and phone usage. It had been cleared up quickly, written off as a misunderstanding. He mentioned it. The HR rep wrote it down slowly, as if underlining something. Suddenly, every harmless moment from years of service looked suspicious on someone else's paper. Jordan walked out of the building feeling like he'd just been tried and half convicted in a room where the rules had never been explained. The police didn't call, no formal complaint was filed, but that didn't matter. This wasn't happening in a courtroom, this was happening online. Days passed. The youth center put him on leave, not fired, not cleared, just left hanging in limbo. His church friends grew quiet. Some sent vague texts, praying for you in this difficult time. Some sent none at all. At the grocery store, a woman he'd known for years steered her cart away from him, eyes flicking to her child as if she needed to move them out of danger. He went home and sat on the edge of his bed, the weight of it pressing on his chest. He had done nothing, but the world was treating him like he had done everything wrong. He thought of all the times he'd told the kids at the center, if you're accused of something, tell the truth and stand in it. The truth will hold. Now, a darker question whispered back at him. What if the truth wasn't enough against a lie that people liked better? He wasn't the only one hurting. Across town, Lena sat in her tiny apartment, staring at her laptop. She was 23, worked at a bookstore, had a cat named Biscuit, and a heart that had been stepped on more times than she cared to count. She had written the post. Her hands had shaken when she hit tweet. She hadn't used her real name. She hadn't given specifics. In her mind, she wasn't lying. Not exactly. She had been at the youth center years ago. Jordan had been kind to her. Too kind, she sometimes thought, when she looked back through the lens of new hurts. He had encouraged her, celebrated her artwork, told her she was capable of more than the labels she'd grown up with. He had once put a hand on her shoulder after a performance and said, "I'm proud of you." It had meant the world to her at 16. At 23, with fresh scars from a manipulative ex who had crossed lines, who had touched without consent, who had gaslit her into doubting her own worth, the memory had twisted. Why hadn't anyone protected her before? Why had so many adults failed to see things? She saw his face in a photo one day during a news story about his community work. Her chest tightened. Anger, misplaced and wild, began to look for somewhere to land. That night, she opened a blank tweet draft. She typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, she wrote something vague enough to feel safe, yet strong enough to sting him. She told herself she was raising awareness. She told herself she was starting a conversation. She didn't expect it to go viral. At first, she watched the notifications with grim satisfaction. You're so brave for speaking out. We believe you. Thank you for exposing him. Then the messages turned harsher toward him. People called for his job, said he didn't deserve to work with kids ever again, dug for any scrap they could twist against him. Lena started feeling sick. She hadn't filed a report, hadn't told a therapist he'd done anything criminal, had never even had a conversation with him that anyone would call inappropriate. What she had was pain, real pain, from someone else entirely. Pain that had grown into something so large, it started attaching itself to any man who had ever been close while she was vulnerable. She had taken that hurt and aimed it at the safest target she could think of, a man everyone trusted who wouldn't fight back publicly. Now, watching his life unravel from behind a screen, the word brave didn't fit right in her chest anymore. It felt a lot more like cowardly. The turning point came quietly. One of the boys from the youth center, now a young man, saw the post thread and felt his stomach twist. Marcus had known Jordan since he was 11. He'd seen other adults come and go. He'd seen men who were too rough, too cruel, too careless. Jordan was not one of them. He was the one who showed up to school plays and probation hearings, who sat in plastic chairs in courtrooms, offering silent solidarity, who showed up at funerals and graduations alike. Marcus watched as strangers online called him a predator, and something inside him snapped. He messaged the anonymous account. I don't know you, but I know him. If you've really been hurt, I'm sorry. But if you're just angry at the world, you're aiming at the wrong man. He didn't get a reply. He kept checking. Nothing. Weeks later, he watched the chaos continue. The board dragging its feet. Jordan's name still hanging in half light. So Marcus did something that terrified him. He went public. He wrote his own post. I grew up in the system. I met a lot of men who should never be around kids. Jordan Evans is not one of them. He helped save my life. Don't destroy people based on anonymous posts with no facts. If there's evidence, let it come. If not, stop sharing harm. It didn't trend like the original. Truth rarely travels as fast as outrage, but people saw it, some who mattered. One of those people was Lena. She read his words 3 times. Her chest tightened. Her fingers hovered over her keyboard. She looked at the original tweet she'd written, the vagueness of it, the carelessness of it. She thought of his face when he had told a terrified 16-year-old girl, "You are more than what's been done to you." How he had given her art supplies out of his own pocket. How he had advocated for her to get into an after-school program when others had dismissed her as too much trouble. He had been the one adult who didn't walk away the first time she snapped in anger and told him to mind his own business. He hadn't hurt her, but now she had hurt him. She closed her eyes, face burning with shame, and for the first time since she hit post, she admitted the truth to herself. I lied. Maybe not in the obvious way, but in the way that counts when you're talking about someone's life. She hadn't just shared her feelings, she'd made a public loaded accusation. And people had believed her because the world is finally learning to listen more to those who say, I was hurt. That progress should have been sacred. Instead, she had used it as a weapon, not toward healing, but toward revenge on the wrong person. The next day, a new post appeared from the same anonymous account that had started it all. I need to tell the truth. My earlier tweet about Jordan was misleading and wrong. I let my own pain and past experiences twist my memory. He never harmed me. I am deeply sorry for the damage my words have caused. Most people didn't see it. Apologies don't spread as fast as accusations, but the youth center saw it. Jordan's lawyer saw it. The board saw it. The investigation closed quietly. No charges. No victims coming forward with evidence of harm. The youth center offered Jordan his job back. They did not offer him his weeks of fear back. They did not offer him the conversations that would never be the same again. He walked back into the building one morning to a mix of relief, awkwardness, guilt, and half-hearted smiles. Some hugged him, some avoided his eyes. Some still wondered silently if, where there's smoke, there must be fire. He had been cleared, but not completely free. Mud washes off skin. It clings to reputation much longer. Months later, Jordan met with Lena in a small counselor's office. She had requested it. He hadn't decided at first whether he could face her, but in the end, he agreed. She sat hunched in her chair, cheeks wet, voice hoarse. I'm sorry, she whispered. I was hurting, and I used you like a target. I told myself it was about justice, but it was about my own anger. You didn't deserve that. He listened, jaw tight, hands folded. There was a long silence. I lost time I will never get back, he said quietly. I lost trust. Not all of it, but enough that I noticed the cracks now. Tears streamed down her face harder. I know, she said. I can't undo it. I wish I could. He exhaled slowly. I believe you were hurt, he added, by someone, maybe by many someones, and I'm sorry for that. Truly. But you hurt me too. And the next time you want to tell the world your story, make sure it's your story, not someone else's life you're borrowing to hold your pain. She nodded, sobbing. I'm trying to make it right, she whispered. Even if I can't. He considered that, then nodded once. Making it right starts with truth, he said, and it starts with being more careful about what we say and who we say it about. Closing narration, twists and truths moral. We live in a world where a post can travel farther than a person's actual life ever will. False allegations or twisted half-truths don't just stain timelines, they stain souls. They can shatter a person's job, relationships, mental health, and sense of self, even if they're later cleared. This story is not a weapon against real survivors. Their stories matter. Their voices deserve to be heard and believed, and justice needs pathways to protect them. But justice demands truth, not just noise. Justice demands care, not just clicks. Before we repost, react, or condemn, we have to ask ourselves, do I know the whole story? Have I heard more than one voice? Am I sharing out of a desire for truth, or just a desire to be part of the crowd? Because on the other side of our screens and our words, there is always a human being, someone with a life, a history, a heart that can break. Some stories expose real darkness and need to be told. Others are shadows cast by pain, fear, and anger aimed at the wrong target. The difference between the two is not always obvious. That's why our responsibility is simple but serious. Slow down. Ask questions. Seek truth. Handle every accusation with care, because lives are not headlines and people are not hashtags.